Hello, welcome to session 16 of the Ed Collab Gathering, using tech tools to formatively assess in Reader's Workshop with Jamie Utecht. Jamie is an associate with the Educator Collaborative. She's an experienced elementary educator, currently serving as reading specialist literacy coach in Random Lake, Wisconsin. Previously, she has served as a special education teacher and a second grade teacher. She holds a master's degree in reading and literacy from Cardinal Stritch University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and a student-centered coaching certificate from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Jamie considers herself a lifelong learner and is always looking for opportunities to learn through collaboration, technology, and reading. Excited to learn with Jamie for using tech tools to formatively assess in Reader's Workshop.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm excited to share some learning that I have done over the years as both a second grade teacher and as a reading specialist and coach. So my presentation today is on using technology to formatively assess in Reader's Workshop. And on this slide here, you're going to find the bit.ly to my presentation. So you can use that at any time. If you have any problems with it, just let me know. And also this QR code takes you right to the presentation as well if you ever want to use the slides. As I'm going along, if you have any questions for me, please use the hashtag, the Ed Collab Gathering number 16, and my username is on the bottom there too. So I'm really excited to present to you today. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself as we get started here. So I am a reading, like she had said, I'm a reading specialist and instructional coach. I like to consider myself a student-centered instructional coach. That's what my training is in, and I really enjoy, basically what it is I really enjoy just sitting next to teachers and talking about students and co-planning, co-teaching. It's just really what I'm excited about. And I'm also an associate for the Ed Collab, and that has been such an honor and such a privilege, and I've just really enjoyed it this year. On the pictures here, these are my two daughters. I'd like to say that they are my inspiration. You know, as a teacher, you really understand when you're then become a parent how important your job is to shape young minds, and especially when you have your own children, you're like, oh man, you know, you really want to do well for all of your students and your children as well. So I just wanted to include those little girls there. My daughter Scarlett's turning 5 in 2 weeks, and then my daughter Nora is 1. She'll be 2 in August. It goes way too fast. A little bit of background on me as far as this presentation is concerned. I used to teach second grade, and when I taught second grade, we had the opportunity to have one-to-one iPads in our classroom, I think my second or third year. And it was so exciting for the students and for me, being able to use technology with my students. And now as a coach, our whole school is one-to-one. K2 will be iPads, and then and up we all have laptops. And it's really neat to be able to collaborate with teachers and students using technology. And so I'm able to also, as a reading specialist and intervention teacher, use technology with my students because they're able to bring their devices with them. So that's where my experience has been with using technology, and it's been a great one. So I'm going to kind of go into, I'm a why person. I really like to know why I'm doing things. Oh, I'm sorry. Just kidding. Go back. I want to know a little bit about who you are. So if you could please use our hashtag, the Ed Collab Gathering number 16, and share who you are and how you have used technology to assess your students. Sorry about that. I'll just give a couple minutes or, you know, to check on that. And then as we're going, if you want to share any ideas or anything that you've used with any of the tools that I'm sharing today, please share on the Twitter, and we'll be checking it throughout the presentation to, you know, kind of add to what we're talking about today. So as I was saying before, I am a why person, and I always think about like, why should I be doing things? Because I feel like that's really important to ask ourselves before we do things with students is why are we doing it? And how is it going to benefit our students? So, a few reasons as to why we should use technology in the classroom are on this next slide here. It's very engaging to use technology. My students, especially when I taught second grade, they were just so excited to use technology. And although it was like a cool new tool, it was really exciting to be able to not just use a tool to use it, but to use the tool to just naturally be a part of our classroom by using them in read alouds to keep them interacted with the read aloud, to be using them to engage with text, with partners. It was just really exciting and engaging, and students just really loved using it. It's motivating. My students would use ebooks. I was just talking with Kristen before this about ebooks. They loved Tumble books, and so whenever they were able to listen to reading on Tumble books, it was such a motivating thing for them, and they just really enjoyed it. And then it's just different. I am huge into using books, but I also think that students really benefit from using ebooks and other tools as well, and using them together. I mean, I when I do read alouds, it's really, I've done like turn-in talks and stuff like that, and I'm always looking for something different to make it even more interesting. So I loved using back channels with my students. Now, unfortunately, the back channel program that I used to use, Today's Meet, is no longer around, but our students would use Today's Meet to just go on, and they were in second grade, being able to just chat about books and what they were thinking as I was reading. And then I was able to go back and reflect on it. We used to do a unit on bats, and they would do vocabulary chats and talk about like different parts of the bat on the chat. So it was really fun, and it's fun. It's fun for everyone. And I think what's fun about it too is it's always changing. And so it's just it's really neat as a teacher to be able to learn from your students. I think that was at first hard for me because I'm like, well, I don't have any control over this. I don't really know if it's a good tool that they're talking about, but it's really neat to learn from them, because even at second grade, I was learning a lot from my students as far as what was good in technology and what wasn't, and they'd show me different apps that they use at home or that they discovered, and then we go over them as a class, so that was really neat as well. So those are the reasons why technology is so neat to use in workshop. Now, also why is it important to use formative assessment? Because that's what this session is about today, is how to use technology as a formative assessment tool. Now, this next slide is just going to talk about how formative assessment really does help the teacher make instructional decisions about what will occur next. So if you teach a lesson and then you send your students back to their independent work time, and you are going around and working with other groups of students, and you still want to know kind of, did they apply what they had learned in that mini lesson to what they were doing in their independent work? And a good way of checking that is through that formative assessment. And we'll kind of talk about that today is, some tools that you can use to do that would be technology. And then the next slide, I think, is so powerful to think about, and that is achievement needs to be viewed not as a test-based number, but as measurable growth over time. And I think that has just really resonated with me too, working as a reading specialist is, students, they need to see that growth over time. They need to see that they're making progress, and I think that really motivates them. We do a lot of goal setting, and the goal setting is based off of formative assessment, and I think it's so important to share that data with students, and technology really allows you to, because it's right at your fingertips. You use a back channel, and then you have it there for you to reflect on, and then you can say to your students, oh, remember when we did this back channel and we talked about this vocabulary word, and do you remember what you thought of that word? Has your opinion changed based off of what you learned after that? So I think it's so important to think about assessment as being, or achievement as being measurable, because you might not get it right away, but you, over time with teaching and learn, you will learn it. So I think that's very important. So the possibilities are endless with using technology to formatively assess. You know, I've used all of these tools, except I'll talk about one of them that I just learned about. SCREENCASTIFY, Quizlet, Poll Everywhere, they're all great tools. This word wall tool I just found on Instagram. You know, you follow all these really amazing teachers on Instagram and Twitter, and you see all these new tools that you had never heard of before. Like I said, technology is so changing, and it's something I think would be really interesting to check out. And I've played around with it a little bit, but I haven't used it. So I just added it on there as a tool that maybe you could check out too. I'm going to talk about 4 of the tools today. The only ones I'm not going to talk about are Quizlet and Kahoot, only because, not because I don't love them, because I really do, but because I feel like they're very, a lot of teachers know a lot about them. And although I could have shared some maybe activities that you might not have done before, I thought I'd use the other ones just to do something a little bit different. So those are the tools that I'll talk about. So the first one. So we're going to talk about Padlet today. Now, you can see in that picture, that is what Padlet looks like. It basically looks like using Post-it notes online. Like, it's a really neat tool. You can add graphics to it. The only downfall to Padlet is that when you do not have the paid subscription to it, you can only do 5 Padlets, which, I mean, I've used it and then just deleted some, so that's worked. But yeah, that is the one downfall to it. However, it's really engaging. So you can use it for things like classroom chats, different vocabulary, turn-in talks, different adding on to what you might have learned about something. So actually, I think this is a different one. This is an example of, so like I said, I work mostly with small groups, and I was working with a group, and we were doing a read aloud on a book, and we'll go back to the slide too, on a book called Elwood Bigfoot, and it's about this Bigfoot who, and it's a sweet book. If you haven't read it, you need to. It's just amazing. But it's about Bigfoot, and he wants to become friends with the birds, but as you probably know, the Bigfoot is big, so the birds are afraid of him. So he's trying everything to have friends, but it's just not working out for him. So, but at the end, it is a happy ending. But anyway, so on one of the pages of that book is the word gingerly. And so what I did was I was reading this to a group of my 4th graders, and I stopped at the end of that page and I said, okay, so let's think about that word gingerly. That might be a word you have not heard before. What is that? What do you think that word meant in that sentence? And so they kind of shared their ideas on it. One said gently, slowly, calmly. And what was nice about that word too is that there were context clues, but also there were clues in the picture, because Elwood was sitting in the tree, and you'll have to read it. It's really good. So they shared it, and then we discussed on it. So it didn't just stop there. And here it is here. And I was thinking 2nd grade, and this was actually with 4th graders. But it didn't just stop there. So we talked about the word, and then I said, well, and after we talked about it, I said, did your opinion on that word change? How are your words, or what you thought, the same? How are they different? So it's a really neat activity to use with students, because then I could kind of gauge on what I needed to work on in future lessons, as far as, okay, so do I need to help them use more of the sentence level clues? Do I need to help them use more picture clues? Things like that. But we just had a really nice, easy time to do that. Now on this slide, you'll see a link to that Padlet, as well as the QR code will take you right to that Padlet as well. And then also the link down there also takes you to it. So if you want to check that out, that would definitely be open for you to see. So that was Padlet. Now SCREENCASTIFY. I have really enjoyed using SCREENCASTIFY. Now, I don't just use it as a teacher. I've used it as a coach, which I think I'm, just loving using it in both areas, but it's basically just taking video of your computer screen to share content. So as a coach, I've used it for, trainings and things like that, or if we get a new program, just teaching teachers how to use it. But as a teacher, it is such a cool tool to use to explain characters, teach others on a topic. You know, we've done, I was in a 6th grade classroom last year, or actually at the beginning of the year this year, and we were doing a grammar topic, and we did a pre-assessment. And the students were placed into groups based off of what they needed instruction on that specific topic. One student had already tested out of it, so he was able to do an independent study using SCREENCASTIFY because he already knew the topic. He was able to teach others using both Google Slides and SCREENCASTIFY to flip learning. So he created his own SCREENCASTIFY on that particular topic, and then he was able to share it with his peers, and he was really proud of it. And actually, what was neat too was being able to work with him to create that, showing how to find something online. So that would be really neat too, if you are doing like a research project, and let's say that you're trying to figure out, are you using credible sources? Well, maybe your students can help you by showing where they got their information from by using a SCREENCASTIFY, and then you could probably reflect on, as a group, was that a reliable source, or was it not? I know our 5th graders have really been working on that in their classrooms. And then also practicing fluency skills. So I'm going to share that example in a little bit, but I thought that would be a really neat way to record yourself and then send it to your teacher, and then you and your teacher can sit down next to each other and listen to each other formatively, give feedback, and then give them something to work on and come back. So I thought, you know, that would be a really neat way too. So my first example is it is on a character. So I'm sure you all have heard of the story Jabari Jumps. It is a wonderful book. And my first example is actually, I created it. So it's, you know, not the best, but it's on Jabari. And so I would ask my students, okay, so we read Jabari. Now, can you please share with me how Jabari has changed over the course of the book? And that would just be a good check-in to me to see, are they noticing using text evidence how a character has changed? So I'm just going to share with you this example of how you can make this work for this activity.
I'm going to explain the character Jabari and Jabari Jumps and how the character changed throughout the story. So here we go. So there's Jabari. In the beginning of the story, Jabari was confident. And by that, I mean that he took his swimming lessons and was really excited to jump off the diving board. And the evidence to that was that he said it looks easy when he saw the diving board. Then, towards the middle of the book, Jabari was nervous. When he started climbing up a ladder, he was getting scared. And some of the evidence for that was that he even thought in his head, this ladder is very tall. But Jabari changed at the end. He was really excited. When he was ready, Jabari jumped off the diving board. He said, I'm a great jumper. And he wanted to do a double backflip next. So I could tell that Jabari changed his thinking and was really excited at the end of the story.
So that's my example. So what I like about this too is, you know, I would say, like, my husband probably wouldn't agree with me, but I'm pretty shy. And I think that this is a great way to get students who don't typically, maybe not raise their hand in class. This would be a great way for them to share what they're thinking, but not in more of a comfortable way, because they're in front of a computer screen and being able to record themselves, as opposed to, you know, being in front of the class and saying, okay, this is my character and this is how this character has changed. But this is a great way of them being able to be comfortable and saying, okay, I can share about my character and then record it and then share it later. It's a little less threatening. You know, and so this is kind of what it looks like here. So on this slide, I just kind of I gave you kind of like how I would preface it. Obviously, I would share with my students how to use SCREENCASTIFY, although it's very simple. Once you download it as an extension to Google, it's just, you just click a button, you record, and then you stop it. I think with the free version, you get about 10 minutes, which, I mean, the students probably wouldn't use 10 minutes on an activity like this. The link to this actual screencast is on, if you click on the screencast icon there. You can take a look at that. But also this link down here is a YouTube video on how to use Screencastify. If you're new to it and you want to be able to use it with your students, that link really helps explain how to use it. So it's a really neat tool. On the next slide is another idea. So my students and I really work on our fluency, but not just on the rate, but on our expression and matching our voice to what the author wanted us to read it as. And so we do a lot of poetry in our class. And so we just pulled this poem from a scholastic book that we are doing, and it's called Jumping Rope. And it's spring in Wisconsin, although it's not really that warm yet. We're trying to pretend that it is. So we picked a spring poem called Jumping Rope, and there's a lot of punctuation in here. So the students and I, we really have been practicing using our changing our voices for punctuation, and we talk about where should we pause, how should our reading sound. We've done a lot of echo reading of the text where I read then they read, and choral reading where they read together, and then some of them, and honestly a lot of them really love to just read on their own, and they like giving each other feedback. But anyway, so this is just a poem that we have in our room. So a way that I was thinking you could use this is just, having this, taking a picture of that, like I have on the slide, taking a picture of it, sharing it with your students, and then just having them screen record themselves reading it, and then pulling them over and giving them feedback on how they read it. Oh, I really liked how you used expression when you said the first C, but I noticed that we weren't using as much expression. Do you know why you weren't? Or something like that, just so that you can get them really thinking about it, so that they can then go back and use your feedback and that was a formative assessment on them. The next slide is another way. So in first grade, we've been really focusing on our high frequency words. And so I've been using actually Tim Rosinski on his website. He included a list of tons of Fry instant phrases. And so a way that I thought we could use Screencast with this is that, and if you click on the link is open. So if you click on that, you will be able to see I did like the first 10 phrases in a Google slide. And what I was thinking is that I could share those Google slides with my students, and they all have iPads, so they could just, and they all have Google accounts. Otherwise, I could just give them my computer and do it too. I'm luckily, I work with small groups, so it's a little bit easier, but even as a classroom teacher, I'd let my students use my computer. It wasn't really that big of a deal. They could just page through, read the phrases, and then send it to me. They can email after you create a screencast, you can email that screencast to or share it with whoever you'd like. So then I can have them share it with me, and then we can sit down and go through, okay, so were there any words that were really tricky for you? And then you can work on those words. Maybe give them more different phrases with that word in it, or sometimes we use word rings or word wall activities, just a way to, because obviously with fluency, you need to, the accuracy is that bridge to that, the fluency. And so if they're, not knowing these words, and it's going to really affect their fluency. So that is just another way of getting students involved, but also being able as a teacher to formatively assess them on, okay, so where are you with those words and how can I help you with them? So that's just another idea of how to use them. Now that link is open, so if you ever want to use it, that is perfectly fine with me. So the next one is back channel chat. So now this is a chat. This is how you can chat online. So I just want to say, as a second grade teacher, I love Today's Meet, and I brought that up before. And I'm so sad that that's not available anymore, because it was just really easy to use. Although back channel chat is just as easy. I really just loved Today's Meet with my students, and my students loved it. It was just so simple, but it was just a little chat, and it gave me that data to go back to, which I really liked. And with that too, they were able to save the data for a while, which this one is too. So with back channel chat, I've used it for book discussions, especially with, and I'll come back to the read alouds too, but book discussions if they're doing book clubs, talking about text, but also just any books that they're reading in Reader's Workshop, because, you know, obviously they're going to all be reading different books. So it's interesting too. You can kind of do a check-in on, oh yeah, what is your character doing in your book? And you can kind of share as a group. Vocabulary conversation. So what does this word mean to you? Let's create word towers using different prefixes, suffixes, roots, book recommendations. So let's say that you have some students who are really stuck right now and they just can't find a book that they're really interested in. And then you kind of say, okay, so what kind of books, what kind of books are you interested in? Does anyone have any recommendations? Why don't you go back to your book boxes and type in there so that we can, you know, share some of those books with our friends, read aloud discussions. So I loved using it for read alouds. And then book club check-ins, and, you know, even vocabulary. So let's say that you're reading, even in social studies science, where it's vocabulary heavy, listing key vocabulary and talking about it and categorizing it and things like that. It's just a really neat and easy way to do it. So this next slide is an example. And this was a book club check-in. So this just would be really easy to do. So you could just go, so you go on to BACKCHANNEL chat, and what you do is you just, you don't even have to create an account. You just say you're a teacher, and then you can set up a BACKCHANNEL chat. And so I just put in there, I said, happy Monday. I'd like to know where you are in your books and what your goals are for the week. Just a little check-in. And so they can do it as a group or they can do it individually. So John said our group is reading A Night Divided. Last week we read chapters 2 and 3. This week we're going to read 4 through 7. Simple, easy check. Piper, our group is reading Fighting Ground. And that book is told in time. It's not really like chapters, like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So it's April 3rd. I read 9:58 to 2:10, and then we plan on reading 2:30 to 5:30. Although it doesn't seem like 3 hours doesn't seem like a long time, there's a lot of content in those 3 hours. And writing, we're excited because there's more action. You know, this story, that particular story is full of action. So it's just kind of a neat way too. I like this for book clubs too, because it keeps us accountable for what we say we're going to do, because you can just go back to it and say, okay, so how are you guys doing with chapters 4 through 7? Do you need any support from me? How are your group members doing? Is everyone on track? What can we do for students who aren't? What can we do for students who are already done? How can we dig deeper? So it's just a quick, easy way for teachers to check in on their groups to see how they're doing with their book clubs. So that is BACKCHANNEL chat. It's just, I just really like it. And again, I just like it too, because when you are a quieter person, like for instance, when I was in school, I was very quiet. It's really nice and it's less scary to chat online. You know, it's not as scary. And also you can see where your friends are, so you might not feel like you're as behind as you thought you were, or you might think, oh wow, we're right on track. So this was just so on this link here is that BACKCHANNEL chat, and also the QR code will take you to it as well. So another way I could use it is, let's say I'm doing a read aloud and I'm reading Wonder to my students. And I read the first chapter and it really talked about being ordinary in there. And that's a really deep concept to talk about, because then you can ask your students, well, what does it mean to be ordinary? And so you can have them on their laps, maybe they have their iPads, or you can send them back to their wherever they're sitting. You know, we have a lot of flexible seating in our classrooms, so maybe they go back to their flexible seating or go back to their desks or you know, whatever, and then come back and discuss, what does ordinary mean to you and why? And I think that would really help come out with some really neat conversations about it. Especially since it is such a complex thing to talk about. And it's really interesting how it was talked about in this book too. So that was just another idea with that. Now, we're going to transition into another tool. So this tool is called Poll Everywhere. And what I like about this tool is that you can do, there's a lot of options for output on what their poll results can look like. But it's really simple, easy to use, and you can actually share as a teacher on your board what the poll results are looking like live from when students are working on them. So you can use it as a quick check-in. So where is everybody at with this concept? An exit ticket. So you're leaving the classroom, let's say that you're working on a skill of summarizing, and you say, okay, quickly, this is what I want you to do. Here's your exit ticket. Fill this out, and then I can know what I can teach you tomorrow. That's the formative assessment piece of it. Vocabulary activities. So there are, and I'll show you in a little bit, there are, you can make like a Wordle, you can make, there's just so many different, there's short answer in there, there's so many different opportunities for it. Let's say you're talking about a particular character, you can create a poll on character traits. So what is that character like? Or talk about characters cross books. So what is your character like? And then let's talk about it. Read aloud check-ins. Okay, quick, let's talk about this. So that's a way that we could use it. So then on the next slide, we're going to give you an example. So my fifth graders were reading this book on oysters and just how they're in trouble. And I have never really read a lot about oysters, but this is actually a really interesting nonfiction text. My students were really interested in it. So let's say they're reading this book, and as they're reading, there's going to be some vocabulary they might not have come across before. So in what's really neat about this tool is that you can create word clouds. So I said to them, well, we can now, as you're reading, if there's any words that you come across that you've never heard of before, or you're still kind of confused on, why don't we share in our word cloud, and then we can talk about it after. So they pulled out some words, and that's the word cloud there on the screen. So over-harvesting, sediments, shellfish, filters. So those are all words that we came across. So then after reading, we pulled together and we talked about, what do these words mean? Over-harvesting, habitat, waterman, flourishing. How are these words related? So like, I didn't realize that oysters are filters, and that they take in and they clean the water, and that's sediments in the water. And I also didn't know that with oysters that they were in trouble because the water was so dirty, and that obviously is going to affect them. And so you can talk about that kind of stuff. And then if a student was really confused on a word, and then another student really understood that word, you can really talk about that. Okay, so you were really confused about over-harvesting. Is there anybody in this class that could teach us? What did they think over-harvesting meant? It's just a neat way to then use your students as experts, not necessarily having you as the one telling them, okay, so over-harvesting means this. Okay, so you all read this. What is it? What did it mean in the context of the text? Or can you go back and look and see, what does that mean? Or can you sit down with your partner with the book and look at that word, what that word means? But what's neat about that too, formatively, is noticing, okay, who's able to really use context, who isn't, who's able to use maybe roots to help them understand it, who's able to, so on and so forth. So it's really interesting to use it in so many ways, but they really enjoyed using it for that particular topic. So yeah, it was a really neat activity. So another way would be like a read aloud check-in. So let's say you're reading Wonder once again, just a wonderful book, and you're getting to that point where you're meeting Jack, Will, Julian, and Charlotte as they're giving him the tour of the school, and it's kind of an interesting part, because it's something that middle schoolers, it's a problem sometimes that middle schoolers deal with how the characters were. And so you can ask them, well, what kind of character was either Jack, Will, Julian, or Charlotte? Pick one of them and share how you knew that. Give us some text evidence for that. And that could be very powerful to see what they pulled out, you know, depending on the person, how they felt about the character, why they felt that way, what was the evidence to support it, because it was really, you know, across those couple of chapters, there's a lot in there. And although it's really great to be able to discuss it whole group, it is really neat to hear their own perspectives, but then pull it together as a whole group and share what they had thought about it. So I thought that was a really neat activity also as well, to share, you know, how they were feeling about a book. And then, okay, so now I've shared these 3 tools. I've shared, you know, the Padlet, I've shared BACKCHANNEL chat, SCREENCASTIFY, and the last one. Now it's time for a chat. So I'd like you to hop onto Twitter to share how you might use these tools to formatively assess your students. So how might you use Poll Everywhere? How might you use Padlet? So my hashtag is the EdClab Gathering number 16. And I'll kind of check in a couple of minutes and we'll talk about anything that you have shared. All right. So yeah, so I feel like at our school too, we really have enjoyed using these tools. Now we've got, like I said, there's like tools that we are available and not available. What's really neat about it too is that even if you lose a tool that might have been there that isn't there anymore, there's always going to be another tool that you can use. You know, and I've always really liked Quizlet and Kahoot, but it's always neat to use these other tools too. And I think students have really enjoyed it. And it's just a different way for them to react to text or to the writing or whatever you're doing. It's just a different way for them to use the technology. So I think that's really important to think about as well. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing, you know, how you used it. So this next slide. So I'm really big into reflection, and you know, as a coach, I'm always, if I do a coaching cycle with teachers, I'm always asking, you know, how did that go? What can I do to improve? You know, today was just a really fun day to interact with everyone on how I've used technology in Reader's Workshop and how others have used it too for more ideas. But I love feedback, and so a few months ago, I was able to present at a technology convention in Wisconsin here, and I was able to use this particular Poll Everywhere to ask, you know, how did people feel at the end of it, and this is what I got. And you know, it's just really a neat way to reflect on, okay, how can I do better when I present next time, or you know, it's just nice as a teacher too, when you are giving a lesson, let's say, and maybe you wanted a little feedback on it, like how did they feel after leaving that lesson, and that's assessment for you to approach teaching the next day. How did they feel like they got it from the way I taught it? Did they feel more confused after leaving? Because then I'm just going to have to teach it a different way. And let's face it, it's happened to me. And it's just the next day we just pick up and we try a different way to teach it. And I think that's a really neat way too to reflect, is using something like this and it's, you know, it's just very non-threatening. Like use a word to describe how you felt after leaving my class today. And do you need reteaching? Do you feel strong on this? And it's just a really a nice way to reflect. So I would really appreciate it after you watch my session today, if you could share with me how you're feeling after attending this workshop. I'd love to hear from you. How are you feeling about the ideas? Do you feel like you could use them right away in your classroom? Do you need support with anything? Because I'd love to collaborate with anybody that'd like to collaborate, because it's wonderful to learn from others. So yeah, I would love if you would participate in my poll. And that link is on there, as far as the QR code too. But I really thank you today for coming to my session. I really enjoy sharing. I feel like I'm always learning from others, and I'm always learning. And even today, as I'm doing this presentation, I'm like, oh, how could I make it better with some of the tools of my students? How could I use it differently? So that is my email and also my Twitter handle. And on the next slide, I just want to share, these are some of the resources that I've used thinking about formative assessment. So, visible learning for literacy obviously is a go-to of mine. And then the third one in what teachers really need to know about formative assessment has really opened my eyes about the use of formative assessment, especially when I was just saying I was a instructional coach, and using formative assessment with teachers to plan next steps in lessons. That book is amazing. I cannot say enough good about it. Now, this 25 quick formative assessments is also a really great tool. So it gives you so many neat ideas, quick little assessments to use with your students. And a lot of them are on paper, but I could see how you could also then use it on technology, or grab a piece of it and use technology with it. So they're really awesome resources to check out. But like I said, thank you so much, everyone, for coming to my session. I really enjoyed learning with everyone today, and it's always a pleasure to present for the Ed Collab. They are just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful group, and I've learned so much this year from being able to be on their team. So thank you, everyone, for coming, and have a great rest of the Ed Collab gathering.
Thank you, Jamie, for a fantastic session. So many try it tomorrow ideas for implementation on Monday. We hope everyone can join for the closing session, Social Action and Social Media, Changing the World Through Student Voice. Thanks, and have a great weekend.